Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. I'm super excited to kick off this event through the Biophilic design community. I just have a few housekeeping notes, and then we're going to get right into it because we got a lot of content to cover. So, like I mentioned, a little housekeeping, some introductions quickly, and then we'll jump right into the content. And I think we'll be able to answer some questions along the way. So feel free to use the chat, and then we'll try to save some time at the end for some Q&A. And I do believe we'll have some interactivity into this as well. All right. This is kind of a new group, I guess, still technically this year, a couple months old. But, the ethos and the goal of our new biophilic design community is really to build a vibrant community of professionals that are passionate about biophilic design and biophilia. So we really want to serve as a hub for that deep connection and peer-to-peer networking and just fostering all that collaborative network, kind of like a mycelium a little bit too. And most of the events in this group are an add-on for professional members, FYI, as is this one. And we'll occasionally offer some free events to all community members. And what you can expect, right? So learning and inspiration, networking, guidance, discussion, and events and workshops. We're really excited about some of the things that we have planned the rest of this year. And of course, we need you. We're always looking for great speakers. So if you feel called to share a project or what you're working on, always, feel free to just comment and share in the community at any time. But if you would love to maybe give a lecture at some point, I do have a pinned post in the community, and in there you can find where you can submit your ideas to speak or even to help manage this community if that calls to you as well. So just FYI. And then when I share this recording, I'll try to remember to put those links in there too. But it's in the pinned post in our community. Quickly familiarize folks with Living Futures biophilic design initiatives. There are a lot. In addition to providing this collaborative space to learn and connect around biophilia, we also are just uniting around Living Futures varied biophilic design initiatives. We're trying to create one cohesive experience for all professional members. You can see there's a laundry list of great resources here, which we also have linked in our community as well. And yeah, I would love to introduce our speaker for today, Kirstin Weeks. She is the principal of BioStudio. She is a leader in regenerative design and urban ecology. She works with interdisciplinary teams to create sustainable, resilient environments where people and nature thrive together. I'm really, really excited to speak with her and have her elaborate on her bio and touch on anything else she would love to share today. And I think that's all of my slides. Like I said, we got a lot of amazing things to talk about. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kirstin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, great. I'm glad to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen. There we go. Okay. So, so as Alexandra has said, I'm going to be talking about my experience leading biophilic design charrettes with a focus on biophilic design charrettes that meet and feed into the requirements for Living Building Challenge imperative. And if anyone was in the session from, I think it was January, that the California and DC member communities did together, you'll see some of the same content. We're doing a few things differently here and a little bit more trying out of activities, but yeah, some of it will be review for you. But if you weren't in that one, then it'll all be new, I imagine. And I'm sure some of you have experience. Really happy to have you share your experience, make notes in the chat. Go ahead and speak up. We're not a huge group today, so we can talk to each other. And if people do put questions in the chat, Alexandra, if you wouldn't mind helping me notice them, because I won't always see that pop up while I'm presenting.
Yep, happy to do so.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's roll. First of all, just a quick intro. I lead a firm called Biostudio. Our mission is we're based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Our mission is to create places and restore places where life thrives and do projects that contribute to a living future for all. And we are organized around the three bios of regenerative design: biomimicry, biodiversity, so habitat restoration, and then biophilic design, which is what we're going to focus on today. Before I started Bio Studio, I spent 12 years in the energy and sustainability team at Arup, and have now been doing this. This is our 6th year at Bio Studio. We're a team of 4 now. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what does Living Building Challenge ask for in the biophilic design imperative, and in particular with the charrette. Talk about how to prepare for a charrette to support success, what are the core agenda elements of the charrette, and then kind of walk through with an example mainly from one recent workshop we did, but I'm going to use the term charrette and workshop interchangeably, but a little bit with a little bit sprinkled in from other workshops, and then give you some tips about facilitation, and finally dive a little bit more into what we're actually trying to produce out of the charrette process. So imperative 19, living building challenge, explicitly requires an all-day biophilic design exploration, and then allows for that to be split into more than one event if the sub events are still at least half-day workshops. So they're really trying to get people to immerse and really think about this topic deeply. And then the outcomes are, there's kind of 3 main outcomes we're going for. One is just a documentation of all the ideas and outcomes from that charrette, a biophilic framework for the project, and then a biophilic plan for the project. And I note those up front just because whenever I do a workshop, I'm always thinking about how is it going to feed into the products that we're trying to produce from the outcomes. And this is a set of ideas about okay, you've got a project, you're going to do a biophilic design charrette. What do you need to think about? And one of the big things is just who needs to be there and when are we going to do it? And that can take actually a lot longer than you might think to pin all that down. So a month to prepare is like the absolute bare minimum. 2 months would be better ahead of when you're targeting. So if somebody says like, hey, we're ready to go, can we do it in 2 weeks? I think the answer is just definitely no. But if it's a month or more, I think it's possible. A month is still pretty tight. You need all the key team members, like the whole design team, the owner team, and then also can be thinking about community members or other kind of project allies, or government folks. The more people who are kind of decision makers that you can fold into this experience together, the more that ultimately will probably create allies of them and bring them in to the process. And then 2, ideally have a preparation session with the client. What do they care about related to biophilic design, but what do they care about with the project? This idea of being relevant and meeting the project where it is and advancing the critical path. If we're trying to if everybody's really, really focused on the energy systems and there's a huge issue with that, and we're trying to have a charrette that's all about biophilic design and it doesn't connect to that energy issue at all, it might be a problem. So I'm flexible with integrating other components into the agenda just to make sure that everybody can be present and feel like we're moving in the right direction. So sometimes that means just segmenting off a portion of the day to talk about something totally different, and sometimes it means folding it in. Then develop the agenda, agree with the client, integrate their feedback. One of the big things is analyzing and developing sort of a knowledge of the local ecosystem and culture. And so if you live in the place, maybe you're the right person to present about that. If you don't live in the place, you want to do your homework ahead of time, but ideally invite somebody in who does live in the place and is really steeped in the ecosystem and the culture there. Let them talk about it rather than you kind of, trying to become an expert all of a sudden and maybe messing some things up. Um, and then I've already said this, but thinking ahead about what are the outputs you're going to need so that you can design activities that are going to produce the kinds of visuals and ideas that you want to use later. Where do you want to have the workshop? Can it enhance the biophilic experience for everybody? The more the whole workshop and day can kind of illustrate the concepts of and opportunities around biophilic design just by being a biophilic place, the better. Can people step out to a beautiful nature place? Can the building actually demonstrate some elements of biophilic design? Those are great things. And then, but at the same time, right, you have to have practicalities. You have to have enough seats for people, places to work around paper, places to present. So we still need that. So having it in the middle of the forest may not always work, but it might. Then ideally you've got a visit to the project site if possible, or maybe the whole thing happens on the project site. Once you've got all that settled and you know what activities you're going to do, you want to make a thorough materials list and make sure who's going to procure and and produce materials and bring them there. As always, with any kind of workshop, you need to feed people and allow for enough breaks so that everyone is charged and able to be present. And then, yeah, ideally, we're trying to have fun and inspire people, and importantly, make everybody feel included, so that it's a great experience and people associate biophilic design with a positive experience. That's a lot, and we'll kind of retouch some of those things as we go through the example, but any questions or comments about advanced preparation? Anything you think I might be missing here? Any questions?
I have a quick one. Is it better to ideally do it all in one day versus break it up because you might like miss some of the momentum, or do you think sometimes it allows for that important reflection time? And then we do have a comment that just came in.
I've been running workshops of various types, sustainability workshops as well as biophilic design workshops for a lot of years. And I feel like people kind of gas out after. I don't like to go more than like 6 hours, or if I'm gonna go longer than that, it really needs to be kind of like we have a whole lunch in the middle of the day where everybody's off, and then I do find that workshops often want to have a 2-day element, like an evening casual meetup, and then you go into or there's different audiences and you want to kind of split it up for the two audiences. I think there's so the prior evening plus the 6-hour day, it might not fully meet the LBC's desire that each individual event goes at least 4 hours, but I think 6 hours still, I count that as a full day. So yeah, this example I'm going to give, we kind of did a couple hours the night before, and then went into a full day. And then I did another one this year that ended up having the same format because it was a youth center. We met with the kids the night before and some of the design team, and then we went into the design team workshop all the next day. So yeah.
I like that. Nicole, you made a comment. Would you like to unmute and ask your question? If not, I can try to read your comment. Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you do this, like, I know ideally you're doing this right at the beginning of the project, but obviously some conversations are happening, like you mentioned, what if there's an energy, issue or whatever. When do you like to do these? At what part of the process?
Yeah, great question. It would not be before anything else happened. I mean, almost ever, but as soon as you can, once things get rolling, I think usually projects are at least doing some level of kind of concept before they even think about scheduling workshops. So sometime in the concept design period, great. Sometime in schematic design, great. After that, I've definitely, like, my last two projects that have done this have been later, kind of SD and then DD. You can still do it, but it's not ideal because you want it early enough that you can actually be playing with the building massing, and there's not too many preconceived ideas about the project, but at the same time, it's nice to have a tiny bit of like grounding in, all right, this is the site and this is the program and these are the kinds of things we've started to think about for design. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
There's a couple more. Joey, did you want to jump on and ask your question? If not, I can read your comment. Or you said that answers my question here. So are you good? Okay.
Oh, yeah, you're saying, when I say materials, I definitely mean for the workshop, not for the project.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Jen.
Yeah, I can come off mute. I've done one biophilic workshop before, and I was just curious what you recommend, how you recommend setting up that planning committee and who should be involved in it so that it's diverse enough, but also not too large.
Yeah, great question. I haven't, it's a really good question. I can answer what has been sort of functional and typical for me. I won't say that I think this is necessarily the absolute ideal. Maybe there could have been more people and more diversity in the actual planning committee. I would say that usually it's us as the facilitator, lead biophilic design consultant, and someone from the design team side and ideally owner side who are prepared to be in the weeds of exactly what are we going to do. Usually I haven't had more than that many people on the planning side. Now, in terms of who do we invite in as part of the experience to make sure we get their ideas, a lot of people, but that's usually, I guess I'd say that's the minimum. And that's sort of what I've usually had, is a really engaged, the interior designer and the architect and a liaison from the owner, or a really involved owner's rep, and with some consultation from the architect, that sort of thing. Yeah, like we'll sometimes have a small group and then socialize the agenda with a broader group to get some feedback, or have a prep meeting where we kind of brief people. I usually do a biophilic design intro presentation in the workshop, and I do feel like something like that could be done ahead of time with a group as well, if you wanted, and you could, bring a bunch of people in for that. Anyway, what do you think about it? Who would you include more than beyond that?
I think that's helpful. For our group, we also included the landscape architect. They were critical in this. And the owner was involved, but it was really kind of more facilitated by the design team.
Yeah.
And then kind of approved by them more. So I think this is helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Awesome. We had two more quick questions in the chat, and then I think we probably should move on. Nicole was adding on, what if the design team isn't all local? When and how do you expect people to fly in? Probably need to budget for that, especially would you want to fly in, would that be your preference and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good for everybody to be there in person. And I think so yes, for sure, to flying in of anybody that is really critical to be there. And so I think that's absolutely, decision makers on the owner side, architect, interior designer, if there is one, landscape architect, at the absolute minimum. And then ideally you have the entire team of engineers and specialists on the design team. And then you would at least fly the core team in. Yeah. I mean, you could also do the entire thing virtual if you have to. If you could have, if you could have 3 people in person or 15 online, you'd probably do it virtually.
Awesome. And then Alan, I don't know if you wanted to come off mute or not. If not, I can read your comment.
Sure. Here, let me pop up here for a second. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, I had asked, about how you have been doing the relationship between the biophilic design charrette and the early decisions like access, building, siting, and so forth. I have a very specific workflow that I've developed, and I was kind of curious how you did that because, yeah, the biophilic decisions to me, have a lot to do with even where the building is sited and how it's oriented and how it relates to the site and so forth in locations where the site has that much flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, I would absolutely do it before you make those decisions so that it can influence, people can be thinking about connection with nature and place when they think about where should the building sit on the site and where are the access points. It's not always possible, but in an ideal world, yeah, I would do it before that.
Very
Okay.
good.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
All right, getting back here. Okay, so then when you're going to do it, who's coming, or maybe you're doing these things in parallel, but developing the agenda. Some of the key components that I always like to include are opening with something that gives people a flavor of biophilic design. Always introducing everybody and letting people talk about themselves a little bit in some guided way, going around the circle and asking them, to tell about a favorite nature place or something like that. If the building is already in design, inviting the architect to give an overview of where we're at in the design, what we have, what are we thinking so far? Talking about the local ecosystem and culture and kind of reviewing that. So having someone do that who's local and inspirational ideally is great. But it could be part of your intro talk too if you don't have somebody to do that. And then if you can be at the site, then I like to do an activity where people are kind of leaning into their 5 senses and recording what they experience there. Something where you can kind of look at and think about the site. Just in bringing everybody up to speed on what is biophilic design and what are some of the opportunities. Food. And then I'm going to show you the think, pair, share activity that I usually do that connects biophilic outcomes, connects design the things people want for the project with biophilic design strategies. And then some other activity that helps people to apply those ideas to specific spaces in the building if we're that far along in the design. World Cafe is a favorite of mine where there are boards around the room and you break people. This is for a big group, really, especially if people are people each start at kind of a station and then they rotate around the different stations so that they get to all of them and then they share out at the end. That's World Cafe. Breaks where people can decompress, do what they need to do. And then I'll show you another one too that I sometimes do that's like collaging or producing something visual together. And a closing. So this walkthrough is going to draw mainly from a workshop we did for the Tower Theater. It's a project in Salt Lake City. It's a renovation of a historic theater that's doing full living building challenge. And so that by itself makes it kind of unconventional in the sense of biophilic design, right? Because it's not it's pretty much zero lot line, and it's this historic building. So we're really leaning into some of the cultural and historic and place-based elements of biophilic design, not only nature too, but not only nature. But I think in terms of the activities, it's the same. So I'm not expecting you to read all this. I'm just letting you know that for myself, I also do a super detailed agenda where I'm like, this is the run of show with all of the different times and what we're going to do. And it helps me think through what are the materials we're going to need, who needs to be asked ahead of time to present something. Can we fit all this in the amount of time that we have? So I do something like this. And this is the workshop that had an evening part over here on the left, where our sort of biophilic immersion was actually a lot about like the culture of the film society and the experience of the building as it is, the historic building. That's kind of the site. And then the second day was at this beautiful aviary in a really not intentionally designed biophilic building, but still it's all wood with kind of like unmilled, tree trunk columns and a lot of light and plants. So it had some nice qualities. And that was more the kind of technical dig in biophilic design charrette day. So just a couple of images, that kind of initial grounding. With the Film Society, we sort of sat in the historic auditorium and just thought about what it means to the individuals there. In another workshop recently, we put up a video of like a local nature area and just kind of invited people to close their eyes and breathe. And we told a story of how the water moves from the mountains down to the place, and just like asked people to imagine if all the buildings around them dissolved, like what was the site, what was the place before? And that was like really, we got a lot of good feedback about that kind of like immersive storytelling. Like, let's understand how we fit into nature in this place, basically in a story way. I always document everything. So I'm having like, if I'm facilitating, then I need at least one other person whose main job is to be like taking notes or videoing. Usually both are options. For the tower, it was interesting because they're a film organization. They literally are filming their entire design process. So they had like an actual film crew filming the workshop. Yeah, someone should be supporting you and taking all the notes so that you can produce nice things like this so this was, what did people say in that grounding initial exercise at the tower about what it means to them. And they also had a film event where they screened something at the end. The whole team really got a flavor of like, what's the culture of this organization and what do they care about and what do these buildings mean to people? We also did kind of the sensory site experience, walking through site, walking through spaces. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? What does the feel like? I've done that, a number of times, and then documenting the outcomes. Since we were at the aviary on day 2, we had someone from the aviary come in and talk about birds and the local ecosystem and, the design of bird-safe buildings, but also just helps people understand the actual ecology better and how does the building fit in. Then this kind of part of the day, pretty early on in the day, I want to make sure people know what we're talking about when we say biophilic design, and equip them with enough knowledge, not overwhelm them, but equip them with enough knowledge that they can start producing biophilic design ideas. So I'm not going to do that right now, but I will do with you guys if you want to participate in this. I like to open that presentation with something. This is something that Bill Browning did the first time I saw him do a talk about biophilic design. And I always do it because I think it's great. Just tell everybody, so go ahead and do this. Picture your dream vacation spot, somewhere that makes you feel relaxed and just where you would love to be. Picture that place. Let me think of one myself. Okay. And then we're in a room together, but you can use the Zoom hand raise. Raise your hand if that place is indoors. And I usually look around the room and there's nobody, or maybe, maybe one. So, that points out that we're interested in feeling relaxed. We think about the outdoors when we're thinking of a relaxing spot. Raise your hand if you can see water in that place. Nice. I see some hands. Yes, lots of water. There's water in mine too. Raise your hand if there are trees in the place. Nice. Nice. And then so I might ask a few other questions, but yeah, it just helps us to understand, like, okay, if we're all imagining ourselves in outdoor places with water and trees, but we're here to design a building, how are we going to bring the spirit of those nature places into the building where we're focused on designing an interior place? So that's kind of that's like the gateway in for the beginner to, like, this is what biophilic design is about. Biophilic design is a method of designing places in which we live and work in a way that satisfies our deep and fundamental need to be connected with nature. So that would be like an opening. And then I would go on and give a longer presentation with some evidence-based examples of biophilic design principles, with some accessible things, with lots of images, and with images that are tailored to that place. So, like, I did this Salt Lake City workshop, and then I went to Hawaii and did a workshop, and we had to change all the images because I wasn't going to bring, Utah red rocks to Hawaii, or, deciduous maple leaves. So a lot of the work for us between workshops is like tailoring our imagery so that even the presentation feels place-based to people. Okay. And then we did another exercise that I really like, and I think Quinn Messenger was the first one who I did this with in a workshop, and I've kept it because it's very accessible for people, and it produces these beautiful collage outputs that are images we can use during the design and sort of publications about the project. Vision collaging. So we curate the images. We ask people on the design team to contribute images owner side. For the youth center in Hawaii we were working on, we had kids run around with cameras and take pictures of what they care about in the place, their existing building, their site, the ocean. And then we bring our own, like, what are some images that illustrate biophilic design principles we'd like to see in the project. Let's go ahead and, we put them all in a folder, we print them all out, we stick them on tables for people with scissors and tape, and we had actual film reels for this one, and then give people big boards, put them in groups, and sometimes there are specific questions for each table. Sometimes it's just like, what do you want the building to feel like? For biophilic design, it might be specific enough to, like, how do we want, what would this building feel like if it were really well connected to nature? Or, you can just tailor your question to what you think is accessible to the audience, but also gets at the biophilic theme. So here are some of our film ones that kind of nicely blend this historic and natural imagery, and then some way for people to put words on is nice, so that the collages speak on their own about what are the things people are trying to say. Okay, I'll pause there. Any questions about those things or comments? See, there's a chat. Let's look. Okay.
Haven't seen
I don't
any
see any
new
questions.
chats come in yet. I think we're good to
Okay.
keep rolling.
Awesome. Okay, so then this is the part, having done yeah, actually this next part is part of the biophilic design briefing presentation that I would usually do, and it rolls into an activity that helps people connect what do they actually want, how do they want people to feel in the space, what is the experience they want people to have in the space, with actual biophilic design strategies. So I'm going to walk through this to show you. This is a biophilic design focused group already, right? So you're probably familiar with Terrapin's 14 patterns of biophilic design. And then the Living Building Challenge uses Kellert and Heerwagen's 6 categories of biophilic design framework. And in my experience, the Terrapin patterns are in some ways more accessible for people. But you've got to put your biophilic design framework in terms of those 6 categories for Living Building Challenge. So we, with Alexandra's help, collaboration, I should say, put them together into a table for just this last, I've been wanting to do it for a long time, and we did it for the last workshop that we did. And so this is a slide deck that helps that introduces biophilic design according to the 6 categories, but also highlights the Terrapin patterns as we go. So and here they are, right? These are the 6 categories, these are the 14 patterns. So we go environmental features, and that includes over here on the right visual connection with nature, showing some imagery of visual connection with nature, environmental features, non-visual connection with nature, sound, wind, smell, some things where you can see and where you can rather hear water, feel water. The second one is natural shapes and forms, which I'd go through and explain the different examples: curves, spirals, fractals, whole tree trunks, images of nature. Biomorphic forms is one of the 14 patterns. Some examples. 3 natural patterns and processes. Being able to understand kind of the complexity and order and just how the ecosystem works to some extent, through the building design elements. Some examples. And then light and space is the 4th category. Natural light, obviously, but also dappled and filtered light, light as shape and form, dynamic light that changes through the day. In the case of the tower, like the film itself feels like it fits in this category. Examples of kind of the nature condition, and then a built condition that generates a similar light pattern. Place-based relationships, really big deal. Beyond nature, also history and culture, and how those things fit in to create a spirit of place that's people as part of nature, and human culture and creation as an important thing that we're also relating to here. Some examples. Again, we like in this slide deck, we've got the nature, sort of a local nature image, and then a local sort of cultural image on the right, or built image on the right. And then evolved human nature relationships, which have some of these fun things like prospect and refuge, a sense of mystery, even a sort of a sense of risk. Well, let's see, I don't have a good risk and peril image, but I like this one. It's like, places where you can, an example is like a platform that's really high, that's glass, where you feel like, whoa, this is kind of scary because I could fall through, but I also know that I'm safe because I'm not going to fall through. That's also a biophilic pattern. So here's some a Utah canyon, and kind of that where you're enclosed, but you can see out, and a built example of the same. Okay, so here's that table, and this is where I want to invite you guys to try out the activity together. So we have the 6 categories on the left side. We have these related biophilic patterns in blue here. And then we have some outcomes that people would desire in a building. Maybe we are aiming for this to be a really calming and stress reducing space. Maybe it's a school or a tech office, and we really care a lot about how people's cognitive performance and how well they're able to think and perform. Maybe it's sort of something in the theater, this emotion, mood, and preference is something that they're really interested in. We're trying to give people an experience where they feel emotions. Or maybe it's about, and Alexander, you added this one, and I like this one, social connection and behavior. So depending on, and then you have basically each of the boxes is referencing a study where where they were able to relate the thing on the left, say non-visual connection to nature, with an outcome on the right. So say reduced blood pressure and stress hormones, like documented in a study. We have all the references, but that makes the table too busy. If people want them, then they exist. So the activity, and then I'm going to show you, there's 2 pages of this. So I would print this out and put it at people's tables so they could work with it, along with a handout that looks like this, where we step through what is an outcome you're looking for. Find that, find something like that on the table, and then find the biophilic pattern that helps you achieve it. Write it down, talk to your neighbor about it, and then share it with your table, and then share it with the group. That's a think, pair, share, right? Think for yourself, write it down, share with your neighbor in a pair, and then share with the group. It doesn't have to be done like that, but I like that format a lot. It helps, people who want to speak up are feeling good. People who need to think for themselves are feeling good. People who want to share with the big group get to do it too. So it gives a little bit of everything for people. So I invite you now we can maybe take like 5 minutes. Let's see, we're at 9:42. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to leave this first page up here on the screen so you can see it. So think about a project you're working on. And if you don't have a project you're working on, maybe think about your own house. Find an outcome that would be desirable on this table for your space. And then track it over to the side to find a biophilic pattern that would help you achieve that. Okay, so let's take a couple minutes to do that. Find somewhere to write down your desired outcome and write down the biophilic pattern that relates to it. And you go ahead and keep doing that. But if you finish that, then you could also start writing down maybe some ideas for the space to meet that pattern. So if you picked presence of water, you could maybe start writing down like ways to get a presence of water in your space. All right, let's take one more minute and then I'll invite if anybody wants to share. All right. If you're still thinking, feel free to keep thinking, but would anybody like to come off mute and share what they came up with? So tell us the desired outcome you had, which pattern you picked, and then if you had an example, an idea for how you would do that in the space. Anybody want to share? The shy group today. Well, I can share. So I looked at it and was thinking about my house, and because I just moved, and so I went right to improved overall happiness, which relates to visual connection with nature, and that was kind of reinforcing to me because one of the main reasons we moved is, well, it's not the main reason we moved, but one of the main reasons we picked this place is because it looks out on the bay salt marsh in the back, and so I was like, yeah, that does contribute to overall happiness. All right, anybody else want to share one?
Yeah, I'm happy to go.
Go ahead.
I've been thinking about my home office, and it's so interesting when you start to think about biophilic elements. I mean, I'm looking at a wall. I have a beautiful photo from Croatia of the outdoors, but now I'm thinking, wow, it'd be really nice to have some sort of pattern. So maybe if there's an accent wall behind my desk with some type of pattern, fractals or plants, something I can incorporate. And then I have this corner right next to my window, and I keep thinking, gosh, what if I green it up in some way, either shelving or just have some sedum, something that's really easy. And then the last thought that I just had was, I love to sit out on my deck. We have a little fountain. Why don't I just turn on fountain sounds? I've never even thought about that. And the outcome would just be so that I am a bit calmer maybe during the day, and if anything stressful comes up. So just interesting to start to think through, oh, I could actually do this in my house. Would be very low lift, very, inexpensive.
Yeah, awesome. So you have that, I heard visual connection with nature with your poster and with the actual plants in the space. I heard non-visual connection with nature and presence of water with the fountain sounds and seeing the water. Great. Oh, and biomorphic forms too. You were thinking about patterned fractals. Very cool. Thank you. Anyone else want to share theirs?
I was thinking about a school design, and thinking a lot about reduced stress and social engagement. And so Prospect was the first one that kind of aligned with that. And so thinking about how the spaces that I designed could provide those larger, like longer, deeper views out into space and into nature, as well as providing those gathering spaces that are so important for that prospect. And then coupling that with the refuge for more perceived safety and comfort.
Nice. Love it. Prospect and refuge for perceived safety and calm. Very nice. All right, great. So this, in a real workshop setting, I would probably leave at least a half an hour for people to think through this, discuss it, share out. but we just did a little sampling here. So thanks so much for sharing. And if anybody else would like to share theirs and didn't get a chance, you're welcome to put it in the chat. Okay, what any thoughts about that exercise and kind of how that does that make sense as a thing to do with people in a workshop for you? Nicole, yeah.
Sorry,
You're just saying yes.
trying to find my audio button. No, I had a question.
Okay.
How do you prioritize then? Like there's so many different potential outcomes here, and I'm sure you get a lot of different input, and maybe people aren't even thinking of ones that you see more clearly. How do you then maybe that's your next slide.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. A lot of the time you get an enormous amount of information out of a group in activities like this. So I do have an example of how we've done that. We collect all the worksheets, make kind of a slide like this for the outcomes document that explains what we did. And then this is one diagram that we made where we kind of gathered up a bunch of the different patterns. It's not my very best graphics ever, but it gives you kind of, here are the desired outcomes people had on the left. The blue dots are how many people actually said they wanted that outcome. So it helps you see like that certain ones are emerging as more important because they have more blue dots. And then that connects to, it shows you which biophilic patterns are important because they're connecting to those outcomes that people cared about. That's one way to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks.
Cool. So yeah, that was an outcome from that activity. And then I'll just jump through. We're getting close to time here, but and I'm hoping I didn't actually plug in my computer and I just got a low battery. So I'm really hoping that I just moved, as I mentioned. So my stuff is like hard to find. I hope that I don't drop off here. I think it's going to be okay. So other activities, the World Cafe is one of my favorites. Like I said, we go around the room. This was by doing biophilic after they've got that grounding in the biophilic design patterns and thinking, then we go to spaces. So each station around the room is a space in the building. And the ask is brainstorm biophilic design ideas for this space. So people go and have maybe 5 to 10 minutes at each station thinking about the lobby, the auditorium, the roof, which have different experiences and different goals. And then in this case, we take pictures of everything, the sticky notes. And then in this case, we put the ideas, we listed them, we noted how many, I let people dot ideas to show like which are their favorites. And that helps like some, out of hundreds of ideas, it starts to help certain ones emerge as more having higher consensus or resonance. And then in this case, we plotted them on a graph to kind of start to think about what's feasible to implement, like in terms of cost and feasibility. What are the things that are the purple are things that are probably expensive, but still really, really important. The greens are kind of the must-dos because they're not that expensive and they're also really important. And then we didn't have things falling as much in these lower categories that you would tend to do a little bit less, that are higher cost or more challenging. You might still do the orange ones, but you really wouldn't do the red ones because they're not that high value and they're also high cost. And then for these we made these kinds of, I try to produce like outcomes that are visual heavy with.
I think her computer died. Right at the end there, we almost made it. Oh. Well, I'm going to give her a minute to try to plug in, but if not, we'll share some of the resources that she presented today and the recording for y'all, and I'll see if we can get some of that. Oh,
here we go. Yes, sorry about that. Awesome. I was sure I had plenty of battery. Sorry about that. Yeah, so what I was saying is let's see, I was doing the World Cafe, so I'll just kind of like talk you through what was in the rest of the deck. So we document these activities and people's ideas. I try to do them in image heavy slides that kind of like call out certain themes and ideas so that it's easier for people to process, and it's also an aesthetically pleasing document. So I think that was all I was going to share about the charrette activities. Did anybody have questions about that? And then I'll just talk briefly about the deliverables for Living Building Challenge. Let's see. Do I send the findings out? Yes. Yes, for sure. So yeah, that's a great segue into the last part of the presentation, actually. So for Living Building Challenge, we have to produce 3 things, like I was saying at the beginning. One is just a document of the charrette. So that's some of the things I was just showing you, where we're really trying to document everything everybody said and what kinds of themes emerged. That's the charrette outcomes document, and we're gonna produce it and then send it around to usually everybody that was at the workshop, ideally, to get feedback. Did we miss something? Just fully kind of like transparent. Let's make sure we captured what you guys thought. Then kind of get that feedback, incorporate it, and yes, have a meeting with the people who are charged with actioning it, design team, owner team, so that we have that figured out to go forward. Then, sort of based on that, like more the feedback from what do we actually love and what do we want to run forward with. Then we produce the Biophilic design framework document. So it's not everything that everybody said. It's more what do we actually want to run with. We're having to pare down and make some decisions about what does the owner and the design team agree, like we really want to take forward, and we're documenting that in the framework. So a lot of the time I'll use that outcomes document, I'll use that and just make some revisions to it but like still try to reuse some of the content to make the framework. And then we also need to make a plan, and the plan is more administrative. It's like when are we having meetings? How are we going to make sure that this is getting implemented in the design process? So it has timelines and milestones and stuff like that in the plan document. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so then the last thing I just wanted to share was more kind of big picture. Some of you have led workshops a lot, others probably not. A biophilic design charrette is just like any other meeting. It's super important. I feel it's super important to really focus on inclusion, making people feel like that they're safe to share, that their ideas are being heard. So I think, some of the things I talked about, like that initial intro where everybody gets to talk and share something, making sure there are different modes that people with different abilities and learning styles and comfort levels socially can engage with, having the breaks, making sure you've accommodated anybody's accessibility needs, anybody's dietary needs, like just taking care of people, and then thinking about who you have there. That was, I think Nicole made a great point, making sure that diverse viewpoints are represented, are all super important as well for making it successful. And, if you have enough time, sometimes people will, like at the beginning of a workshop, sort of establish, like actually have the group set some ground rules that everybody agrees with and helps everyone feel like, a positive experience. And then at the end, having some way for people to then feedback. For you, there's a plus delta exercise. If you do more than one day, plus delta is kind of good, where you can say, well, these are the things that went well, these are the things that could have gone better. Let's incorporate those for the next day. I don't do those things as much as I should, but I feel I should do them. So I wanted to share those as well, and or having like a feedback opportunity kind of survey at the end, so people can give you their thoughts so that you can do better the next time. So that's it, and thanks for staying the whole hour. I'm happy to stay a couple more minutes if there are any additional questions. I was glad we got to engage as we went as well. And I'm happy, if you're leading a charrette and you want support, you want to do it together, I'm totally happy to talk with people about doing that sort of thing. So I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you so much. That was super informative and learned a lot. Yeah, we'll post this to the community, and yep, she just put her email in the chat. It's Kirstin@bio.studio. And thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. That was great.
Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.